We went to a local hangout called Dirty Don's Oyster Bar, and Stuart asked me to marry him that night. He didn't have a ring, but he asked me if I would marry him, and I told him yes. I was thrilled beyond words. We immediately left and went over to a payphone in the parking lot of Studebakers, which was right next door, and called his parents to tell them, but I did not tell my parents at that time. Once the word began to get around that we were engaged, everybody started to show a little concern. Even guys that were friends of Stuart's were coming to me on the side saying, "What are you doing? What are you thinking? You can't marry this guy." I mean, everybody in my life that knew about it was questioning what I was doing and warning me not to do it. I don't think at the time, I don't remember even ever thinking, well, I can change him later or anything like that. I just knew I loved him and that I wanted to marry him. I wasn't thinking about long term, what it would mean for our lives. I wasn't thinking about after we got married what it would be like. I just knew I loved him and I wanted to be with him, and I didn't heed any of the warnings. I pretty much just ignored everybody because I loved him and knew I had to be with him. Don't remember how much later it was, but we went to dinner at El Cerro Grande, which was a Mexican restaurant at the beach, and that was where Stuart proposed again, and he had a ring this time. So it was after that point that I finally told my parents.
Shelley and I married on June 12th of 1993, and we've been married for 16 years. And as it turns out, though, simply getting married, while it was a major turning point in my life, was not the end-all, be-all answer that my life needed.
Shortly after we were married was when reality set in. The honeymoon phase didn't last very long, and I remember over time having the realization of, oh my gosh, what have I done? Stuart was way past the drugs and behavior that you've heard about already in his testimony, but at this point he was still very much a heavy drinker, and that was the source of most of our problems. I nagged him constantly. We fought about it constantly. I had compromised every standard and value that I had sort of set or imagined for myself when I imagined, like most girls do, being married one day, having a home and a husband. I had compromised on all of that. It was nothing like what I had imagined, and it was so different from when we were engaged, because like I said, when we were engaged, I didn't heed any of the warnings. I didn't even think about the fact that he was so different from me and that that he had these problems. But once we were married, that just became the main source of our problems. We fought all the time, and I completely hid it from my family. I was miserable. I was sad. I was really regretting what I had done, and it got so bad that I really wanted to leave him, but I didn't, just because I didn't want to prove everyone right. I didn't want to hear all the "I told you so's." So I just hid it from everybody and lived with it.
It pains me to look back and know how hard I made Shelley's life through those years, and even greater than those painful feelings about that, though, was the terrifying way that God did finally change my heart and mind. 5 years later, I was driving home from a gig at the beach in the wee hours of the morning. I was on 15th Avenue South in Surfside, and I was flying down a little side street. The speed limit was 25. I was doing probably 70. And I was drunk. And can I just say right now, of all the terrible things that I've done in my life, and y'all, there's things I ain't never told nobody and I ain't going to start telling you either, that are way worse than what you've heard up to this point. But of all the things, the horrible and terrible things I've done in my life, I think that one of the things I'm most ashamed of is driving drunk. What a horrible and arrogant thing to do. But I did it all the time, and I was driving home that night, just blitz, and I was flying down that tiny road, and I passed a cop going down 16. And I saw him, and I knew, he was going to turn around and come after me. I knew he saw me. So I flew into my driveway, into the fourplex where we lived. I took the keys out of the ignition. I threw them in the bushes. I put an unlit cigarette in my mouth. I jumped out, and I pretended like I was looking for a lighter in my car. And I'll tell you another day how, once again, I talked my way out of jail. I'm a pretty good talker, I guess. But I talked my way out of trouble that night. And it's a wonder I didn't get locked up just for being ugly and arrogant to the popo, but they didn't lock me up. But I hadn't walked away from my trouble with God, though. I went in, and it's funny, Shelley told me today, I didn't let her read this before tonight, so this is the first time she's heard it. But I did. I was talking to her about it this afternoon, preparing for Sunday, and she told me that what I'm about to tell you, what I was about to tell you isn't actually how it happened, because my mind it was so ruined that I didn't remember it. But I know she's right. So she says I walked in that night. I thought I woke up and came to the realization, but I walked in that night and there was just this impending doom all around me. And I knew, like I have never known anything in my life, that if I did not change my life right then, that God was going to end it. He had it with me. His patience had reached an end. The noose of death and destruction that we read about in the Psalms was now smothering tight. I could no longer breathe. The tidal wave of destruction had swamped me, and I was drowning in sin and rebellion. I had, for all intents and purposes, become my dad.